Just the two of us, huh?
Just the two of us so far.
I was only planning to listen as well.
Me too. We'll see who joins.
Yeah.
I know that Alan has been very busy and may actually give up being captain of this group, and not sure if that's happening or not. So
Yeah.
We'll see.
Actually, just one thing, what I've noticed is in the documentation channel in Slack, there are a lot of issues being mentioned, but they don't seem to be going anywhere, like logged to actually be dealt with. I don't think GitHub issues are being made for them. So maybe something needs to be done about that. I don't know if you just have a look now, you'll see a couple right now that have been put in today or yesterday. So they're sort of disappearing into the ether.
Interesting. And so that's a really good point. And I think a couple of things about that. We have several repos. And so I don't know that they're all getting put into either the correct repo, or maybe we need one source of truth, or I'm not sure what that is exactly. But I've noticed that as well, and thought maybe that's a topic for discussion on how we do that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we've got it right. And I kind of think that it goes back to, where do you submit an issue? Does it go in Salt? Does it go in the repo where it's going to get fixed? How do I know that? That's a large question, right?
All of the documentation is in one place at the moment, though, right? So it'll all go under the Salt repo?
Well, except for Getting Started's in its own repo.
Sorry, which one?
Getting Started.
Okay, I've not even seen that.
Yeah, so there's some interesting things there. And then we also have, this working group has its own repo called Docs Hub, where I think we've tried to manually mirror issues, and I'm not sure if that's right, that's the correct way to go, or if we need to set that up on a map. I'm not sure. So it's something to think about, and it's been on my mind for a little while. So I'm glad that you brought it up, because I think about it almost every day. I wonder if other people do too. And I think it needs to be better, way better. So for like the one that Kirill posted, this is broken in many places, formatting in this doc is broken in many places.
Just to explain to Alyssa what happened, I was just mentioning that in the documentation channel in Slack, there are people posting issues, but they're not going anywhere else. So they're not going into, say, GitHub, somewhere where someone can then actually deal with it.
Yeah.
So it's just like what the plan should be behind that.
And so there's a couple of things we could do. So if there's a lot of ways to go about it, and I think that all of them could be correct. We could drive people to say, hey, that's an issue. Did you create an issue in Salt for that? Can you move it here? And
which I did on the last time somebody posted an issue. I was like, hey, create an issue for that, please.
Yeah. Or do you need help creating that issue? And that's probably my initial response, because I think that's what we've done in the past, because we have kind of driven everybody to GitHub. There could be, we were just talking about it in the open hour about making some automation within Slack. There are ways to use the integration between GitHub and Slack to create issues, or to put them in, so that if a new issue is created for documentation, that it would come into that channel, or if it was merged or things like that. It can get really notification heavy. So I want to be mindful of that. But at the same time, I don't think we're doing it quite right, and we probably need to moderate that in a different way. But I'm open to ideas there. If just saying, hey, did you create an issue for that, or do you want me to? Maybe just a first step, and then we could look at things later.
I wonder if it would help to have somebody to own that process. Like if somebody was directly responsible for that, because I think in the past, Alan was managing it quite well to a certain point, but he hasn't been able to manage it lately. And so there's kind of been a vacuum in place. And so maybe now that Derek is more devoted to Open Salt, he could possibly take on that task. So.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good way to go. I think that the working group as a whole could take on that responsibility and divvy it up somehow or automate it somehow or something. And that's kind of where I see it going. I don't know what that looks like today, but that's kind of my thought. And as Derek comes back next week, we could kind of talk about it. It's some things that I've been thinking about with just process in general. And this is a big one. This one is kind of narrowing it to docs, but kind of across the board, because I think we have 89 public repos, but like when we triage, we only check salt. That seems like we're missing the boat there. We probably need to think about that just a little bit. And I think about it every day. So I definitely think about it for docs.
Speaking of a few process announcements, Sage, I don't know that you were involved in these emails, and I need to maybe let the rest of the documentation group know about this. But Alan is probably not going to be able to continue acting as the working group captain for now. For one, he's terribly ill this week. I'm sure you can guess why. I don't want to say it on a recorded call, but I think you can guess why. So he's very ill, and also his work has been extremely demanding lately, and he's just not. And so it's not that he hasn't enjoyed working with the working group and that he doesn't want to continue to be involved. He just doesn't think he can be in the role as the captain. So we're probably going to have a meeting with him next week if he's feeling better. And Derek and Cassandra, and probably you as well, Sage, to just decide who should be the working group captain. I'm assuming it'll probably end up being Derek. Alan did suggest that it could probably be fairly democratic. Like, we've been democratic up to this point. So that's not a bad idea either. So those are some different options that we can explore. So.
Yeah, I was kind of aware. You definitely gave more detail and color. So poor Alan, and I know he's been very busy. So
yeah, working 12-hour days, he says. So it's been a lot. Yeah.
Poor guy. And I think that this group is actually, and I know that it's really his love. So I know that if he's stepping away from it, there's a good reason, because I know that it's been kind of his whole thing, and I've really enjoyed that. And want to make sure that we're helping him as he needs that, because I think that as things change for him, we should be able to still be able to support it and then move it forward. And as he comes back, that's great, and keep things rolling. The group, I think, has done a fantastic job, and we've had a little bit of a lull. And I think this gives us a good opportunity to say, hey, just because somebody's not available doesn't mean that we need to have that. So let's put some process in place to make sure that we're not. And if that's democratic or whatever that is, I think that's great. And I think everything's been written down in you guys' repo, that Docs Hub, sort of collectively over time. And I just haven't gone to look at it. I've been busy with other things, but just to continue that. And as we make this shift, I hope that we're just documenting some more stuff. Since we're a documentation group, I think we're probably better at that than others. And so, but that wouldn't be a ton of stuff to document. I think that it's minor, and it's in the large scope of things.
The next thing we probably also need to have a conversation about is, I know Cassandra was interested in having a Docs Jam of some kind.
Yeah.
And I know that we were interested in that because one of the constant requests we get from the community, and I think it's a very good request, is that we need more examples in our documentation of how to use a specific module to accomplish a certain task, and to come up with, because different people will have a lot of different use cases for the same module.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And people just need ideas and to see how a module can be used in context. And so a Doc Jam could be a really great way to do that. We could kind of look through some of the modules, because I know another thing that Alan wanted to do is to begin tagging modules to show which ones are well supported and actively being worked on, and which ones are not, because we need a signal like that to the community to help them know which modules are a good idea to use and which ones maybe that's still experimental and you can run with it, but just be buyer beware,
Yeah. Something else I'd like is things that are modules that are core to salt or not. And today we don't even, people know it's sort of tribal knowledge, and it's not, well, you can't go in and tell unless you've been working with SALT for a long time. And
Right.
even I'm like, I had no idea this module existed. There's modules that come up all the time that I'm like, we have a module for that?
Yeah,
I had no
exactly.
idea. And
So for me, I would love to see a Docs Jam that is focused on that kind of a task where
I love that.
we're identifying, we're kind of like ranking the modules and kind of tagging which ones are core to SALT, which ones are well supported by the community and by the core SALT team, and then which ones are maybe like have possibly even been abandoned and might need to be marked as such. And then also adding, just especially for the ones that are core to SALT, adding a lot of different use case scenarios and putting a call out to the community to say, how are you using this module in context? Can we write a case study up for that and provide some examples in the module documentation for that? So
yeah, something that I've been thinking about just the last couple of days, as this has come up a little bit more during our planning sessions, is I would love to do like a one-day doc jam that's really focused. And this would give us a really good focus. And then we could have more of them throughout where they're really, really focused. And so we have a really good agenda, and we have a primary focus so that we can get the right people there and be like, this is where our focus is going to be, and this is where we're going to go with it. Because I think we'll have a better outcome if we do that, if we focus on something really, really narrow instead of being like, we're going to update the docs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you need to give people a way to contribute, like a clear way to contribute. Like when they show up, have instructions for what, like, think what kind of tasks they could work on and how they could help and contribute, you know? So.
Yeah, and that could even be as simple as, like if we took the Docs Hub repo and we labeled some issues as Doc Jam and a date or something, and we told people these are the ones that we've identified that we're going to focus on here, and or something even that simple. Or it could be a list or a spreadsheet. There's lots of ways to do that. I think in GitHub, it may make some sense, and then sometimes it doesn't. So for whatever particular piece we're using, we could use the tool that's correct. So it may be GitLab, kind of depends on what it is. Those are some things that I would really like to put in place, because then I think it would be really neat to have those. If we could have them quarterly, I think that would be amazing, because if we could really focus just 4 times a year, I think we would get a ton of documentation that's really amazing and cool.
Yeah, because I think we have this wealth of knowledge inside of our community about how to use SALT in context. And it's awesome that we have that knowledge, but it's not being captured and documented, and that's what we need, you know?
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, within the community, we have this tribal knowledge that exists, and I would love to capture it in the docs and be able to keep it ever fresh and available.
Yeah. So that's what I would love to see come out of a Docs Jam, would be to capture some of that knowledge and get it written down and shared, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. On that, I think that we have documentation that's needed for testing, especially as we move into where now we require tests on every PR, and where we're trying to move over into using PyTest. And so that's that's a really large chunk, but specific piece of documentation that we really need. So also something else we could focus on in a doc jam maybe later. And I think that we could even start listing out some things somewhere, maybe, I'm not sure where, but I think it'd be good to have a list maybe in that Docs Hub repo.
Yeah, I love it. And related to that too, one of the things we were thinking about doing that the Docs Jam could possibly kick off. So you know how we have the testing clinics, and because tests are required as part of like submitting a new bit of code to the SALT project, and we have the testing clinics as a resource to help write the test that you are going to submit along with your code requests. In that same vein, since we also require documentation, it would be nice to be able to provide documentation clinics to help with that. So I'm getting ready to
Yes.
submit some new code to the repo. I would love to work with like the testing clinic people to design the tests, but also have some guidance from documentation people to help me in writing this documentation, you know,
I think that's great.
just to lower the barrier for contributions and to ensure, and also, but also to increase the quality at the same time. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had, I think it's still out there. I actually haven't looked at it. There was a really large PR out there for a long time that was just fixing spelling errors. But what it was doing was also changing spelling errors that were written in a module. And so it was a really interesting thing, but it was so big that I was like, this needs its own focus. And that would be a really good like docs clinic focus. Can we change this? Can we not? You know, where I think sometimes we need a full day or even a couple of days. I think one SALT conf, we called it a doc sprint. This time we're calling it a jam, which I think is similar. And, but the clinics, I also really like that because we've had, I think, a lot more success with doing the testing clinics. So if we could also do that with docs, I think that would be amazing. So
yeah, I think it would really help people because like docs can be intimidating for developers who might, for whom writing might not be their forte or their interest, but they still have to do it if they're contributing. So I would just like to be able to like ease that burden a little bit while also still helping maintain quality. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we, like a lot of things, don't have some automation in place for that, and we could for checking for things grammatically or spelling or against a module so that it's the same either syntax or spelling. And that would be also something for a clinic that I think we could you know, ideate on and then put into place.
Can I ask a question about incentives? I don't currently know how the core SALT team prioritizes reviewing merge requests, but it would be really nice if somebody has gone through the work of attending a testing clinic and a documentation clinic to somehow allow that to bump themselves up in priority. Maybe, I don't know if that would be a bad incentive, but I would like to be able to say this has been reviewed with the core teams, like for quality. And so that like that will, you know, like, so it has a certain seal of approval. I mean, maybe if there's a way that it's not just I attended the clinic, but I also received an endorsement or yeah, exactly. Like I show that I actually did something in the clinic as a way to help. I mean, both to incentivize people to attend the clinics, but also to fast track it if they've done what we've asked them to do, you know?
Yeah, I think inherently that's supposed to happen, but I think that it would, what you're touching on is a way to kind of expose that and make it really transparent, and then also do it, you know, so that we know that we did it, right? Yeah, and that is not lost. I think that may have just not been explicit, and we probably just need to make it more explicit. So I'm interested in some ideas about that, because I think there's a lot of ways we could do that. I'm not sure what is the simplest at the moment, but
I wasn't sure if it was feasible either. I was just like, it'd be nice. So
yeah. It's also something that I've been thinking about on the whole, as I think about the question that gets asked a lot of when will my PR be merged? What release will it come out in? Or here's an issue or a feature request. How do I know that this is actually going to get addressed? And it kind of comes back to that as well. So if you're, you know, engaged in our community and you're submitting requests and you're writing tests and things are passing, then those things kind of happen. But I would love to expose that and then prioritize that and incentivize that. And this kind of just goes along with that.
Exactly, just to encourage people to be good actors in the community, to like play nice and help achieve the quality, and know that we'll meet them halfway. We'll help them as well, you know. So
yeah, I think in the past we've kind of done it just really manually, and so I need to think about that just a little bit with the with our process and tools. But I am on board.
Yeah, things to think about because I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall a little bit here.
Totally good.
Yep.
Yeah, something that we talked about recently in a planning meeting with Derek, where we talked about the way that the PRs are being tested. And so if we could market that this is just a docs change, but so that it doesn't have to run through the test suite. And so that we can make that run a little faster. That's another kind of incentive to be like, hey, use this the way that it's intended, so then it'll go faster and then you get your PR merged faster. And it's little things like that that I think we need to also think about in other ways to make that happen. So next week, I think I have already on the calendar, I'll check some planning meetings specifically around documentation and things we're going to do for the magnesium release cycle. But I need to put on the calendar something for process, and it may include some of that. So I need to look at that, but I know I have one that's specific to like open documentation, magnesium release, and what we're actually going to focus on. But then I'll do process as well.
You wouldn't happen to know, I mean, Cassandra seemed like she was moving forward with the Docs Jam and even had a date in mind. Do you know if she's formalized a date for that?
I don't think she has.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, we talked about coupling it with the Port PR Jam.
Which is, what's the date for that? Can I get that?
That's the last week in July. So I think it's the 28th, 29th, and 30th. So we thought that was coming up too quick, and we didn't want to deter from either one of those things, and they're pretty different.
I'm also out of town that week, so that's not good for me.
So that's not going to work.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. And so then she was looking to couple it with Salt Conf, and I hadn't said it to her yet. And wanted to say, well, we can do one at SaltConf whenever that is, and however that's going to go, since we don't quite know if that's going to be all virtual or if it's going to be some in person or what. But I would like to do a one-day jam that's agnostic of everything else, so that we could just get started, and to plan that somewhere. And her and I had talked about that tiny, but I didn't say those exact words, so I will. Because I think that that's actually kind of important.
Okay, that's good, because she had talked about some specific dates, and I remember it was coming up fast, and that if we were going to commit to that, we'd need to act quickly. So I'm glad that we can have a little bit more time. So
absolutely. And I actually think, so something that we talked about is August, and I realize August gets a little bit difficult because a lot of people in Europe take off 2 weeks. But I don't think that should hinder us. I just think we need to work with it.
Yeah. Once we have like just a general date, I think all we'd have to do is just begin thinking about the logistics of how we would want the Doc Jam to be structured, and how people would commute, what we want to get out of it, how we could structure it in order to get to meet those objectives. That kind of thing could be good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And since we've done, by the time we do a Docs Jam, we will have done 2, one internal, one external. And I've done a lot of event planning and done some events like this, although I haven't done as many virtual, so it's a little different and kind of puts a nice spin on it. But I think that Cassandra and I, with her experience as well, we're really getting that whole like upfront process of the plan is really coming together really nicely. And we have a good, like, this is really, let's make it simple. You show up, we've given you how to set up your environment, the instructions of where you go to find things, the 2 things you need to do, and then you're done, right? Or whatever it is.
So what do you think about, on July 23rd is our next documentation working group. We could like, I would love it if the documentation working group could be the core sponsor of the Doc Jam. And so we could spend the next documentation working group working through the logistics, like what do we want to get out of this Doc Jam, and how are we going to, like, when people show up, how are they going to interact in order to contribute to those objectives and goals? So how can we design a system that helps people contribute without being too obtrusive? And things like also how do we incentivize people to participate? We can talk about those kind of issues. So I think that could be really good if we make sure that we plan that on the 23rd. And in between that time, we could maybe set a tentative date for when the Doc Jam could be. And once we have that date in mind, that could help give the working group a focus for that. So
yeah, and I think we could just pick a topic, like if we want to do the modules and get some use cases, let's just pick one. And then I think that may help us with the date. Yeah. And then that'll also help us to pick a date, because if we have a focus and we know what we're going to plan for exactly, then that date may shift a little bit, and we can work within that. But yeah, I will make sure that I've got that on my agenda and my calendar so that I'm there, because I think that will help you guys.
Yeah. I wonder if, so I'm pretty sure Derek and I could both come to that one. I wonder if it would be beneficial for Ashley to come too, because she always has good insights on that kind of thing.
Yeah, she can. I think it'd be great.
And then Cassandra, of course. I think we should try to get Cassandra to make sure that's on her calendar.
Yeah, if you want to make sure to talk to Ashley, I'll talk to Cassandra.
Okay, I like that. So July 23rd, we'll use as a Doc Jam planning session.
Yep.
Would you also be willing to, the one question in my mind is how to incentivize people to come, how to make it so that community members see this as being valuable and something worth contributing to. And that's a piece that that's a weak point for me. So I don't know if people who know the community a little bit better could probably have some better insights on that.
I think Cassandra's probably got the best insights on that. And we do have some stuff planned for the Port Jam. And so we may be able to just continue. I think some of it may depend on the date. So let's just talk to her about that.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and I definitely make sure that we've got that on our agenda to talk about it. So I'm going to write it down.
Okay, cool. Because I never know how to do that, how to get people to show up.
Right.
I know how to make it so that when they show up, there's something for them to do that's productive. Right. It's the incentive part that's hard. So.
Yeah, it's the incentive part. And so sometimes that's kind of more about a date and a time. Sometimes it's about swag. Sometimes it's about what we're doing. And I think it touches on all of those pieces. And she's really good at okay, so we're going to do this and this and this. And that's how we're going to get people there. So cool. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a really good project. I like that. And I think that'll be good for this team to take on.
I do too. That's exciting. Okay.
Because I think that's a real, a consistent thing that I get asked for from the community. And so I think it would be a really good community service. So.
Yeah. I'm actually interested in talking to this group more about what we were talking about at the beginning, where we were talking about issues. But I don't have any more today. So maybe we need to all collectively think about that and come back. Because I don't want that to get lost.
Will you restate what you want us to think about, more? Because that was earlier in the meeting and I forgot.
Absolutely. Totally. So there's a lot of issues that people will bring up in the channel. So in the community Slack channel for documentation, people will say, hey, like this one from Kirill today, formatting on this doc is broken in so many places. But do we have an issue for that? Is that actually going to get addressed? And that's kind of just one example of how do we get issues for documentation in the right place at the right time so they get triaged and prioritized and then done. And that involves a lot of things. So
you're right. It's not just about getting the issues onto the board, although that's a part of it. But then once they're on the board, what happens next?
What happens next? Yeah. And then how do we know that? And I think this group can take the helm on that. We were talking about it being really managed. Alan was really doing that. He's a little bit pulled away right now. And so this group, I would say, it's collectively the group's responsibility. And maybe that's just saying that and documenting that's what we do. That's part of like our responsibility as a working group. And so everybody should take part in that. And then going back to the channels and making sure that the issues are written. And then also on that flip side of doing some grooming. So we have a really large backlog in the SALT repo. A lot of it has to do with documentation. Something that I'm going to start with the team that I've kind of started doing a little bit, and I'm going to continue and make it more of a force, is that we just absolutely have to groom the backlog. We do not have what I would traditionally call a product owner or a product manager who is doing that role. And so it's really up to the team to do that. And I would say with documentation, that's also true. And that we probably need to set up, it could be asynchronous or it could be done together. I'm open to how that gets done, but that we are doing it. We're actually grooming it.
Yeah, my request would be that we figure out a way to make it so that it's not all on, say, Derek or something like
absolutely.
that, because that's a lot for one technical writer to shoulder
it's too
by
much.
themselves.
Yes.
Which is probably what it would end up being. And so it would be great if we could figure out how to get help from both the core team and the community, like figure out how to get help on that. Because let's just say upper management would not necessarily like Derek to spend all of his time on open SALT either.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I think that for this group, it's more about really us understanding the group's responsibilities as on the whole, writing that down, and then putting what we can in place for automation to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, if it's all right with you, I did talk to Alan, and he said he would love to have a meeting next week when Derek is back, sometime in the afternoon on anytime after noon on any day. So what could be really good would be to have a meeting with you, me, Derek, and Cassandra, just to kind of sync up and get on the same channel about these different issues, like how to address the issues in the channel, and then what happens after that. Talk about the Doc Jam date and things like that. And the working group captain, like how we want to handle the working group captain responsibilities going forward. So
that sounds great. I can do any afternoon, and I'm actually happy to set something up if you'd like.
Oh yeah, that'd be great if you could. So
okay.
Yeah, Alan says he's free anytime after lunch.
Okay. And he's central, so that's easy.
Yes.
Okay.
And Derek is back on Monday.
Perfect.
So, and I should be around as well, so we should be good.
Okay, cool. I will make sure that we have that. I actually have quite a few meetings to put on for next week, where some of our MVPs for the release cycle have really changed. And so I put a meeting on and then I canceled it because I was like, wait, we're not actually going to do that MVP. So I've had to regroup. And so I'll put that on because I had one for documentation that was really narrowly focused. And then I was like, but I need like 3 if I'm going to do that. So let's just have 1.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just do that.
Yeah, I think we just probably need a chance for the stakeholders to just be in the same room and just talk and get on the same page,
Absolutely.
you know? So,
yep.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Sweet.
Great.
And for me, even though Open SALT is not going to be my primary focus for the next couple of months, I'm still very interested and would like to participate in at least the working group and help out where I can there. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think in the past Alan was really driving towards his project board and issues that were there. And I would just say that we continue that with this group. We're going to kind of focus on the jam a bit, but I would like to spend some time probably next meeting where we do kind of just go over the issues that people are working on, maybe do like a mini stand-up and is anybody blocked on something, or is there something that's coming up for people? And Alan kind of did that every time that I attended, and I think that's probably something we probably need to do again.
Probably, and I don't know if if Derek's going to be the working group captain, if he wants to take on this responsibility. But one thing I could do that I'm pretty good at doing is being the announcement cheerleader, like to just announce, hey, the working group is coming up, and hey, if you want to add something to the agenda, like I can take on the
Totally.
communication role for the documentation working group pretty easily. So that's something I can do to make that a little bit easier, and to help maybe increase the visibility of the group within the
Hmm.
community too. So
I think that's great. Okay, cool.
that's a role I'm pretty good at doing. So
Yeah, absolutely.
when I know it's my role, at least.
Right. That's my problem. I'm like, am I doing that or are you doing that?
Yeah.
Who's doing that? Because I can do it.
Yeah.
Cassandra and I do that a lot. Who's doing that? I'm doing that. You're doing that? We both do it. Somebody. Yeah. That's
Imran,
awesome.
was there anything else you wanted to discuss related to the working group? I apologize if it's felt a little bit like just a dialogue between Sage and I. So is there anything you'd like to talk about?
No, not at all. At the beginning when I joined, I said I was just here to listen, really.
Okay.
The one thing I was going to ask, but Bryce disappeared. When you mentioned about preventing the testing, all the test suites running when someone sends in a documentation-only PR, do you have a method for that right now? But do you know of a way of doing that?
They were talking about it and I don't remember. I'd have to get that to you because it seems like they had not a fully baked idea, but a definite path. I'd have to go back and ask. I can get that to you.
Okay, no, because one of the things you could ask is it the commit message itself? Because what we're doing sometimes on the formula side is we just append skip CI in brackets, in square brackets at the end of the commit, and that prevents the test suites from running. Is that
Mm.
what's expected from documentation contributors, or is there some other method? Because I think
Yeah,
that would be helpful.
yeah, and they talked about it. I just don't remember. I'll get
Okay.
back to you. It seems like it might have been commit message, but I'm forgetting. I'll have to go back. I'll
Yeah,
get
it'd
it
be
to
worth
you
mentioning. It'd be worth mentioning that in the
on the
channel as well,
channel.
so that people
Okay.
might just
Yeah.
feel it's a bit easier to contribute, because when you put in a PR and it starts running all the test suites, it's just like, oh, this is going to be, it's going to take ages. Whereas if it's
Yes.
done in that fashion, it can be merged within minutes. I mean, if someone obviously was to look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. I'll
Does
get that to
it
you.
and does it run, like, it costs us money to run the test suites, right? So if there was
Yes.
a way to flag it so that it's
Yes.
documentation and doesn't need
Yes.
test suites, that would save money
Yes.
too. So
Absolutely. And
win win win.
there's some other things there too that we could be doing. So other PRs that we don't need to run the full test suite on, that we could also limit that. And I wanted to look at that on the whole, but I definitely thought that we needed to start with documentation right away. And I
Yeah.
just don't remember what they said they were going to do.
Okay.
I'll go back and
No
find that.
worries.
And I think that is, so Derek was in that call and I kind of think he was going to run with it, but I'll ask him when he gets back about announcing that, because I think it does require a change. So whatever PR that goes in to make that change, we also need documentation on it in our contributing guide, and we should probably put something in our template about it. And then I do think that it needs to go into the channel, and so that the people that are watching that are going to see it. So that kind of full force of communication. So we're doing it on all the levels. We're doing it at the PR level and a change log. We're doing it in the channel. We're saying that we're doing it here, and we're also planning for it and making sure that people are doing it when they come in. So that contributing guide and maybe our template and all those other things as well.
Sounds good. Was there any other issues that you had thought of, Imran, that you thought were worth mentioning?
Just to reiterate the idea about maybe splitting the documentation out as soon as possible, the bits that can be taken out.
Yeah, we're laying the groundwork for that. The process, just so you know, like the process of what we're going through is we've been in order to do that, we're going to implement a new theme and some back end changes to the core salt docs that are going to be broken out. And we need to do some tests to make sure that it's not going to break the open salt stuff when we change that. So in order to make sure that we're not breaking open salt, we're testing it on some enterprise guinea pigs first. So for the next couple of of months, we're going to be working on converting over some of the enterprise documentation to the new theme to see if it gets broken, and then we'll begin testing during that process. We'll test to see if it would also break the open salt docs. So we're laying the groundwork for that, and then hopefully right around like October, November-ish, worst case scenario, end of the year, we should be able to break out the open salt docs separately. If we end up having extra time, and plus maybe if Derek is dedicated to the open salt docs, we might be able to speed up that timeline. It kind of depends on how the conversion process works for the enterprise docs and what gets broken in the process and how bad those breaks are and how bad we think the breaks would be on the new theme for open salt. So yeah.
Okay, yep.
Sorry,
Sounds
that's
good.
a long-winded answer.
No, it's actually good to know that. It's good to understand what's behind it.
Yeah, because I think one of the issues is the open salt docs are running on an older version of Sphinx, and we need to upgrade that and see what happens when we upgrade that, and we need to future-proof it so that it can easily upgrade to any new versions of Sphinx that come out, so that we can take advantage of all the cool new features that come with those new versions of Sphinx. So that's where the slowing down is occurring. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anyway.
Yeah, great question. Something
But
that
I
think,
would love to see that too. So.
Yeah, we talk about this all the time, and we're all like, okay, what's next? Can we do something?
Yeah.
How can we move this forward?
So.
Have you guys kept meeting minutes for this group? Or just the recordings?
Yeah, we've just been doing the recordings.
Okay.
I was thinking of like, after this meeting, posting in the documentation channel some of the things we discussed, especially going to mention that our next working group meeting will be devoted to Doc Jam planning, so that people can get a heads up for that. But is there anything in particular you think would be good to call out to the community besides that the next thing will be the Doc Jam planning?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me look at the notes that I just wrote. I think that it would be really good to call out that we talked about the Doc Jam and the ideas for the Doc Jam, just bullet points.
Yep.
I think that we should also call out that we're looking at clinics that mimic test clinics. That we're also talking about some process within docs. And we're looking at the working group responsibilities. And also the changes. I want to call out we're looking at not running the full test suite on PRs for documentation, and that will be forthcoming. And if I can, I'll try to get that to you right away, and maybe that could just come out in that communication, and then we can reiterate more so.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm starting to think that it could work really well to have Derek as the working group captain, and then I could maybe help as like in kind of a keeping meeting minutes and posting meeting minutes and communicating with the documentation channel and things like that. I wonder if that could be good going forward, just talking out loud. So I'll begin doing that today by posting these. So
yeah, perfect. I think that some of the working groups use just a markdown file and they put it in their GitHub repo. Some use their channels, some just use they have a board. They have like a Scrum board or a Kanban board that they use, and as that moves, that's kind of part of their meeting. I think capturing some things that are said in the monthly or biweekly meetings is important. I don't know that I care how it's done exactly, but I think that for this group, we probably should have that in place. I kind of think the board was where Alan was going with it before, but everybody has a different style, and I'm open to that. It'd be really great to point to something. An MD file or an RSD file is fine, as well as having everything in one place. So
Yeah.
maybe that's part of that Docs Hub wiki. We've used that on the community as there's a community wiki and repo that we use. And so we could also link back to that if we have it in that repo. It's all in GitHub. And then if we keep it in Slack, we could link to a document put in Slack, but Slack is not forever. So I think that we need a forever place to put it. That's why I'm thinking
that's
that
a really
repo.
good point. Okay,
Yeah.
good stuff.
Cool.
Okay, well, I'll at least start by posting this in the Docs channel. We'll do that much. Maybe I'll post it in a couple of places too.
Okay.
And this should be good. And you're going to schedule that meeting with
Next week.
stakeholders. Okay, sounds good. All right, is there anything else we need to talk about?
I don't think so. Imran, do you have anything?
No, nothing else. That's great.
All right,
Okay.
good discussion. And so we'll reconvene as a working group in another 2 weeks and plan that Doc Jam.
Woohoo!
Okay,
Exciting.
cool.
Thanks,
All
Imran,
right.
for joining. Bye, Elisa.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.